Pisces 7, a cross lying upon the rocks. The fall of Christianity, or in specific terms, the fall of faith, not really any particular religion. In fact, some might say that Christianity is more responsible for the fall of faith than the preservation of it. The thing is that intuitively we know that something's wrong. If we smell a rat, we know there's a rat to smell. And there's something wrong about the teachings of religions that make us feel that feeling. And so we reject religion because it's actually false. A valid thing to do, but what has happened to the great loss of our species is that we've thrown out the baby with the bathwater. We threw out God when we threw out Christianity. And that wasn't the right thing to do. God's fine. It's the Christians that haven't quite understood how to teach their knowledge of God. And they started finger wagging and saying, if you don't do that, you go to hell, and all that nonsense. And that's not the only religion that does that. It's the problem with what religions have. So what we're talking about here is the loss of our faith and the need for us to rediscover it. The result of a loss of faith is depressing, it's sad, it's awful. You become cynical and you don't believe in anything important. You have to put your need for believing in something onto something else. And however much you love your family, it's not okay to invest your sense of spiritual fullness in something so imperfect and impermanent. We need to find something permanent, eternal, everlasting, in which to have faith. So the family doesn't do it. Your job doesn't do it. The things you buy with money, that doesn't do it. In fact, nothing here on earth does it. We need to move out of this plane of scientific materialism into the plane of truth and love, beyond all that we see in this grubby world that we're forced to live in at the moment, and to a world which is light and beautiful, and have faith in that. Now, we don't have to call it by any particular name. You can call it God and you can call it heaven if you want to, but that's because we've been trained to call it that way. And in some ways, these are not very productive. These words don't help very much. I found it very useful to learn the other names of God that exist in other religions and make up some of my own, so that when I'm actually trying to form some relationship of communication with that eternal principle, that infinite principle of life, actually, I want that name to be something which doesn't have stuff around it, and God does. I was told to believe in God, and it's just like, well, what? I was a child. Why do I have to believe in something I can't understand? Teach me what it is. Teach me to understand it, and then I'll see whether or not belief bubbles up. But that's not what was the way. The way was a finger-wagging way. You must believe in God or you're a bad person. Well, unfortunately, that got wrapped up in this word God, and so God to me isn't the best name for all that is. All that is might be, or unity, or Om. I like Om, that's a good one. And I call it Allah, and I call it Allah, and I call it Abvun, and I call it other things, because those names make me feel good. And if I'm not feeling good when I'm in the presence of God, then I've kind of missed the target somewhere. And so we have to, in some way, renegotiate our relationship with God if we're to regain a wholesome, healthy access. Now, it seems intuitively obvious that good health requires us to give some attention to all the bits and pieces of what make us who we are. So the way we think, the way we feel, what we do with our physical body, all of that has to be given some attention if we're to maintain good health. And if we forget to do that, then we become confused or anxious if we haven't worked out the mind stuff, lonely or cold if we haven't worked out the heart stuff, physically degenerate if we haven't actually kept fit and kept a good diet. All very well and good. But what about the soul? If we have a soul, then we must give it some attention and some practice of meditation or prayer or being in nature or listening to music or something where the soul gets a chance to just feel itself and be a part of who you are. If you don't give attention to your soul, then how do you expect it to operate within you? Nothing operates without attention. So if you give your soul attention, then it begins to operate within you. And its operating principles are pretty remarkable. It knows what the mind does not know. It can see the future sometimes. It can feel the present more deeply. It can align your whole sense of beingness so the body, heart, and mind are all at one. That brings a sense of health which is far greater than physical health. This is what happens when you access your soul. If we don't access the soul, then we haven't light, and we haven't direction. We don't know what we're doing here. Why are we on earth? What on earth are we doing here? What are we supposed to do? Do I follow my desire nature? Because that seems to lead to ill health when overindulged. Do I deny my desires? That seems to leave me lacking something important. How do I work it all out? And you won't find that. You won't find the answer to these questions, not unless you access the soul. And the soul is accessed through faith. There isn't any way that you can be shown definitively that the soul exists. It's not in that world where it can be measured. The scientific materialists think they can measure everything. Well, that's just not true. Not everything can be measured, and the soul is outside of the reach of measurement. It's only accessed through the intuitive side, the side that depends upon an ability to listen to the quiet inner voice, to trust your intuition. And when you do, then you realize you have to make it up, actually. Anything which is not measurable is not examined. And if it's not examined, then it's entirely creative and subjective. There's no objectivity to apply to it. So you find yourself in this situation where you have to invent who you are on the level of soul. You have to invent what God is. And you have to work all this out yourself. When you align with God, when you're in keeping with your soul, then that is what I can do. That is what I can attract. This is the way I feel. You have to invent all of that, or create it, however you want to see that. And this mystery that we are who we create ourselves to be is largely denied. And this is exactly because we don't have access to the soul. So many people yearn for and wish they had anything they wanted, and they think they're going to do that following the path of money. It's exactly the opposite direction. If you give all that stuff up, just play with it if you want to play with it, but you give up your attachment to it, and you focus inwardly, and you become thoroughly married to your soul, you will find that the wisdom of the soul is that you do make it all up. You do only ever get what you choose. It is all that we think it to be. You know, everything that we have in life is what we choose it to be. And you can't know that without knowing the soul. You can think that, but you can't know that. But when you know the soul, you do know that. And so, why would you want money to buy something you can just create with your imagination? You wouldn't. You wouldn't get lost in that world full of people that are grasping for money with a soulless attitude of ambition. It's no good, that world. It doesn't, not on the soul level. So we have to try and tease our way gently out of that world and affirm fully our willingness to create the life that we want in soul consciousness.